Welcome, we're doing another video on Quantum TV, my all-time favorite review YouTuber. In the last video, we talked about how he did 2 videos on God of War, or how he calls it, Dad of War. In the last video, we covered the first video where it was a TV review in which he didn't even review the TV, he just nitpicked every single possible thing about the game. And in this video, we're going to talk about his actual quote-unquote take about the game, which I have to point out has a whopping ratio of likes and dislikes, with 1.4 thousand dislikes and 250 likes with 11,000 views on the video as of the making of this one. So you know what, with all of that being said, I say we just go for it and look at his video.
Out of War. Today I'm going to be giving you a review on it. Now, a lot of people have kind of already picked what side of the aisle they're going to be standing on. They either like the game or really hate the game for various reasons. I'm just going to be giving my take, since reviews are subjective. Take it for what it is. You don't have to agree with me. You can disagree all you want. And again, you can always agree.
That's a good start. You know, I just hope that you don't strike anyone's video who doesn't agree with you. That is something that you usually do.
But I think we should talk about this game because I think it's actually pretty good and pretty bad at the same time, and we'll talk about why. So if we look at the box art, it's kind of like meh. There's not like a whole lot of crazy graphics going around, and I don't know, maybe I'm a little old school, but I like back in the day when they used to do that cool little thing, how they used to kind of put little cutscenes to show you what the game would be like, certain aspects of gameplay that they're highlighting. I wish they would have done that. Most games don't do that nowadays, so I guess we'll let that one go.
Right, so he starts the game review by reviewing the box art, which is something promotional. Most games in today's age are digital anyways, so you don't exactly have all this promotional stuff on the box art. And while I do agree with him that, you know, I do wish that, you know, they did a little bit more with the box art, it doesn't define the gameplay of the game. So you can't exactly review the box art and put it together with the review of the entire game.
But if we talk about further onto the additional offerings of the bonus characters and what they offer, so I guess maybe you can be happy if you like the color white and gold as, like, I don't know, like he's a Spartan, so I would have expected like maybe like an exclusive Spartan outfit, maybe the OG skins to be like a pre-order bonus. But to see this like kind of like it's a colored version of an armor piece that is literally already in the game, and it just doesn't really feel very unique or exclusive. It kind of removes any real desire to have pre-ordered in the first place. So the pre-order bonus is definitely a little weak in my opinion there.
This is one point that I actually will agree with him on. They're not the best. They are not the best, but again, it's something that is more on the promotional side. You know, it gets you to order the game early, gets you to actually get the game, you know, with the sense of, oh, I'm actually getting something more when pre-ordering the game. Which, again, it doesn't defy the gameplay of the game itself.
The install size for Dad of War is basically 84 gigs if you're on PlayStation 5 and well over 100 if you're on PS4. Now, this is, again, in line with what we've seen, so we can't really be too critical here. Games are just going to be really large, so you're going to have to invest in storage. Though, I will say it is annoying to see that the game is this big and the graphical improvements aren't really kind of in line with the game of this size. More on that later.
That is bullshit. That is just not true. I mean, you have games like Warzone, Modern Warfare 2, fuck it, even Cold War and Vanguard. They are fucking huge. They have, you know, 200 gigabytes of, you know, storage needed. And for example, some of them are not as graphically gifted as others. So your point of, you know, oh, you know, the graphics are not in the size is bullshit, because the game does look pretty and you played it on performance mode. So you can't exactly talk about the game not being graphically pleasing and not being in the size.
Taking to the main menu, you can kind of see a couple different things. I mean, you have the typical story elements and options, but there's nothing really unique, right? And I think this is where these story games kind of, for a lot of people, where we heard a lot of the negativity come from, kind of play into part, because typically when you have a game that's story driven, the only thing that matters in a story game after the story is beaten is its replayability, the replay value. This game, like many other story games, have very little replay value because it's just repetitive and it doesn't really do a whole lot to change that.
You're telling me that this story game that I finished is the exact same game the second time I play it? Fucking disgusting.
Another problem is, even though that game doesn't have some sort of replayability through challenge modes or other unique custom modes that we would have loved to see, it just does not have that replayability because it doesn't have chapters. I don't know how many games that are story driven they like to make where it's just a one playthrough and then you restart all over again. I think that kind of defeats the purpose, especially in a game plus mode, for example. I feel like, so you're already acknowledging I beat the game, I've already got all my stats, I've already got all my gear. Let me pick what chapter and what part of the game I want to play.
I mean, let's be real. God of War has 12 main story missions that form the core campaign and 47 side quests or favors. Plus, if we add the total time it takes to beat the game's main story quests and the favors, you're looking at around like 45 to 50 hours of gameplay. He also goes on to talk about the fact that God of War Ragnarok isn't challenging after he played it on the easiest difficulty. That's as if I played Elden Ring but used mods to make it easier for myself and then complained to myself that I made it easier for myself. That's stupid.
Now this next piece I took a lot of heat for, and I really don't care, because I still feel the same way. The pacing of the story is too slow. Simply put, they spend too many hours on screen talking, to the point where a lot of people have called this a cutscene simulator. It didn't really feel like you were being dropped into this action game. It felt a lot like it was a very slow opening of a movie.
He talks about the game pacing of the game being too slow, and while I agree that there's a lot of cutscenes, I do not think that it is too slow. Isn't that what's to be expected from a Sony game? This game is supposed to be movie-ish based. It is a slower talking, more character bonding game where you get to do the action yourself, and the slower parts are done by cutscenes.
I don't know. I didn't like the writing personally. I thought it had a lot of room for improvement until the latter half of the game. Now, once you get to about midway through the game, it's pretty engaging and the action scenes are a lot more. So the cutscenes are a lot more forgivable. But in that opening scene, you know, the boy with his wolf, you know, he's crying over the wolves, but then he has to fight a wolf, and it's just all this stupid contradictory stuff that I just, from a writing perspective, did not appreciate.
He goes back to talking about Atreus crying about Fenrir dying in the opening scene, which we know he is some type of psycho that hates emotions when it comes to pets. In the last video, in one of the comments, I've been told that I was in fact right, that Quantum is a vegan, and it all makes sense now.
Again, that's to each their own, but that's my take on that. More unforgivingly, though, I think is the way that the story kind of doesn't have a built-upon theme. And what I mean is like, okay, so in the last game, he was a dad. We all know that he's trying to build his son up and all that stuff. And now they're trying to establish the opening story again as him being a dad. We already know that, so don't spend the first half of the game establishing the fact that he's a father. We get it. But the whole game plays on the theme that he's a father, hence the name of this review, Dad of War.
He goes on to say that the game doesn't have a built-upon theme and then describes the game's theme. And no, the game isn't just about Kratos being a dad. The game is about how Kratos must decide whether he will be chained by the fear of repeating his mistakes or break free of his past to be the father Atreus needs. It's not completely based on, oh, I am a dad. That is stupid to say.
Now, the art style of this game can be characterized as one thing in my personal book. A little lazy, because if you really look at it, it just loses a lot of the high next-gen aspects that we were expecting. And to the point where you're in performance mode, there is no good reason why you can't be in performance mode at, say, 1440, 60 FPS with maxed out textures and resolution. It doesn't happen here.
He then goes on to make another very fucking stupid point where he says the art style of the game is lazy, and why would you not be able to be on 1440 on performance mode at the same time with max graphics? That is stupid. The console is just not powerful enough to do that. If you want that, then wait a couple years and then play it on PC, if that's why you bought the game.
I really would have liked them to implement some form of a high resolution mode that has really tack sharp visuals. Now, of course, you can always go into performance mode, but that runs at 30 FPS, and that is a joke on next-gen consoles, so there's no point in using it if you're like me and you bought a PS5 for high frame rates. Which kind of goes into the next thing. The higher the frame rates, the worse the visuals get. That's just how the game plays. And I think for me, when you combine that in with the dated mechanics, it gets to be really lazy because it runs exactly like the last game from the way you...
Holy shit, no fucking shot, really? You don't say. It also makes sense that you need your graphics to be lower to get more frames. What exactly does he want? It is pretty easy to understand how FPS works. This isn't the con of God of War Ragnarok. It is every game ever made. That's how FPS works, Quantum.
You move, you swing your axe, it's a copy and paste. I would have really loved to see some more of the fluid gameplay come back that we saw in the older games. I loved how the Chaos Blades, or the Blades of Chaos, were just more swingy than they were in the older games a lot faster than they are here, where it feels a little bit more sticky, especially when you hold the right bumper to pull off that combo. It never really feels smooth. It feels very clunky the way he pulls off that combo when you hold the right bumper. Now, generally, when you're swinging the blades around, you can have a good time, and they feel okay, they feel responsive enough, but it never really feels quite as good, in my opinion, as it did on the older games.
As I said in the last video, it is a fucking sequel. He essentially wants the new games to be like the old ones, but then you're doing exactly what you said you didn't like.
New players, though, will be happy to know that this game is really easy to pick up. It's not terribly difficult. If you click Give Me a Story, they'll give you a story. The only downside that I find is, like, early on in the game, they don't really give you a waypoint. So, like, in the opening scene where you're, like, at the house, I did spend a little bit of time running around, and I got a couple of locations wrong as to where I could go, but the game isn't so challenging or so vast that you can't figure out where you need to go if you get turned around. I do wish there was always a waypoint for people who wanted one, but again, for the exploration types, it gives you a little bit of that in the opening.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, Quantum, that's just you having the attention span of a literal toddler, and just kind of being stupid. I'm not gonna lie. You are not the smartest of men. So there's really no in-between with people like Quantum. Either they complain about way too many waypoints in a game like this, or way too little waypoints in a game like this.
Now, you'll also be proud to know that despite people being really angry about Angrboda being a black girl, there are no politics in this game. So for people who are trying to bash the game and say it's just politics and all that stuff, it's really not. It's a fun game that I didn't run into anything like that. So that part, I can completely say when I've heard people saying that, it's just wrong.
No one complained about Angrboda being black. At least I didn't see anyone complain about Angrboda being black, and I've been on this game for like the past 2 weeks, and you know, and watching videos about it and reading about it.
Because she did a great job, by the way. Angrboda, the person that played her, did fantastic. I couldn't tell you how immersive it was when that character was in the screen talking to Loki and doing all that stuff. That was a really immersive part of the story, and I think especially you'll appreciate it the more the story progresses, and then the more you see how things play out without giving too many spoilers on what her role is.
He also says he likes the parts of the game that Angrboda is in, and the cutscenes were done really well, and they're really immersive. A lot of the parts that Angrboda was in were mostly cutscenes. You just contradicted everything you said in the start about you not liking the amount of cutscenes that there is here.
And I think this is a good game. It's honestly, frankly, probably the best game of 2022 so far. Now, that's not a compliment, because we haven't had really good games this year. We just haven't. But this is absolutely the game of the year this year. Despite what some people think about Elden Ring, this one takes the cake, because it just does a lot to engage you enough, even though the opening is slow, that once you get the story going and you get into the game, it is fun, and you have a lot of time, and you're on, like, almost like an interest trip. Like, hey, like, I want to know what comes next. Like, you're kind of, like, waiting for the next little bit as it comes. And it's a fun experience that almost anyone of any walk of life can pick up and enjoy.
So he then goes on to say that God of War Ragnarok is Game of the Year 2022. But not for a good reason, solely on the fact that we haven't had good games this year. Which is bullshit, by the way. Just because you don't like the games that came out this year doesn't mean they weren't good. I mean, talk about Elden Ring, Stray, Tunic, Horizon Forbidden West. But just because you didn't like those games, and didn't like playing those games, doesn't mean that they don't deserve Game of the Year. While I do agree that God of War probably will win Game of the Year, and for a good reason. I mean, it is a really, really good game. It's not like it really lacks behind Elden Ring, Tunic, Horizon Forbidden West, or any of those other games.
All in all, I would say this game is a solid 8 out of 10. It is a really good game, and I think a lot of people will like it. Again, there's no such thing, I think, in my opinion, as like a perfect score, and it would have been a 9 if it would have had chapters and wouldn't have been a copy and paste combat-wise as the last game. So just to kind of go into why it got the rating it did.
He then proceeds to give God of War Ragnarok an 8 out of 10 after all of that shit he just spewed. And that's basically all that there is to the video. I don't even know what to say anymore. Fucking drop me a like. I'll see ya.